Ladies and gentlemen, we are on service, and if I can remind everyone to please turn off your cell phones from the service.
So welcome everyone. If I could ask children when they're children to come up to the stage here and start to We're about to tear ribbon, and this is a ritual called Strear. We tear when we have a loss in Jewish tradition, and there are lots of reasons that we do this. Let me give you two. One is that we are physical beings, and so when we have a loss, we have a need to do something physical. Tearing changes nothing. It's not cathartic, but it feels right. Secondly, it's a symbol of the tear in the fabric of your family. And thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, it symbolizes a change in your status. Up until this point, your job has been taking care of details. Even with other costs, even with me, it's to say that everything is in place. Once you tear, your job is to let us take care of you. So for hearts that are torn, we perform this act of kriya, this act of tearing. I'm going to ask the four of you to please repeat after me. Adonai Natan, Adonai Lakach, Adonai Lakach, Yehi, Shem, Adonai, Nevorach, God has given, God has taken away, blessed be the name of God, blessed be the name of God, Baruch atah Adonai, Dayan, Amen. We praise you, Adonai. We praise you, Adonai, truthful judge. And let's all say, Amen. Traditionally, we wear in the outer garment for 7 days.
Adonai Madam Vatedeu Ben Enosh Vatechasheveu Adam Lavel Dama Yamav Ketzaver Baboker Yatzit Vechala Loev Yemolav Yovesh Tashev Enosh Adaka Vatomer Shuvu V'nei Adam Lu Chachmu Yaskilu Zon Yavinu Le'acharitam Ki lo v'moto yikach hakol Lo yirer acharav kevodo Hoda Adonai Nefesh Avada V'lo yeshmu Kol achosim bo From Psalm 144. Adonai, what are we that you have regard for us? What are we that you are mindful of us? We are like breath. Our days are like passing shadow. We come and go like grass, which in the morning shoots up renewed, and in the evening fades and withers. Would that we were wise and that we understood where we are going. Adonai, you redeem the souls of your servants, and none who trust in you shall be desolate.
Death has taken a beloved Leonard Streer. And our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence, there is lamentation. In the tears that have been shed, there is loneliness lost in their sorrow. May they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God, and be with them. For Leonard's love that united us in life, and which death cannot sever. For his companionship that we shared along life's path, and which continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of his heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness, and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. And in this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred scripture that brings us the ever new message of God's nearness, that tells of our kinship with the Creator, in light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in life as in death. In the 15th Psalm, we find the following: Adonai mi yagur bo halecha mi yishkon bahar kodshecha. God, who may abide in your house? Who may dwell in your holy mountain? Those who are upright, who do justly, who speak the truth within their hearts, who do not slander others or wrong them or bring shame upon them, who scorn the lawless, but honor those who revere God, who give their word, and come what may, do not retract to, do not exploit others, who never take bribes. Those who live in this way shall never be shaken. And perhaps more than any words, those of the 23rd Psalm have brought so much comfort to so many over the ages. I'm going to ask Cantor Sachs if she will chant it in Hebrew, and then I'm going to ask you to join with me in the English. Cantor?
Adonai roi lo echsar binot asher bitzeini al mei menuchot al mei menuchot Nafshi yeshoveh, yeshoveh, yoncheni v'maglei tzedek, yoncheni v'maglei tzedek, v'man shemo. Gom ki eilech begitz al mavet lo ilah ki ata imadi shivtecha umishantecha hema Yanachamuni.
together. God is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. A few moments ago, when we tore the Kriya ribbons, we said these words from Job. Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, Hishem Adonai mevorach. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God. An ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief in the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us, and yet the centuries have taught us that the Keter Shem Tov, the crown of a good name, endures beyond the grave, and that there is strength in faith. And so with Job, we say, Adonai Natan, God, you have given, you gave us Leonard Streer, who will not be forgotten. And for all that was good and all that was enduring in his life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. V'Adonai lakach, and God, you have taken away. We pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and love as we now say, Yehishem Adonai mevorach, me'ata v'ad olam. Blessed be the name of God now and forever. And finally, in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, we find it written, Achol zman va'et, l'chol chefetz tachat hashamayim, for everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down, a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones, a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time for silence and a time for speaking. And my friends, now is both a time for silence and a time for speaking. Now is a time to hold on to memories of a life that was so well lived, filled with so much love, so much caring, so much joy and goodness. Someone who made a difference to his family, to his community, to his business, to everything he did. Leonard made a difference in this world. And so we remember him in silence and with words of tribute as we take a few moments now as we look within and we remember Leonard.
May the words of my mouth meditation of my heart be acceptable to you, Adonai, my rock and my redeemer. Oh, say shalom, bimroma, hu yaseh, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, amen.
Friends, I want to call up Mike to share some thoughts, and then Brian on behalf of the grandkids. Mike?
Each of my father's children, spouses, and grandchildren had a unique relationship with my father. The traits that we all share instilled upon us by my father are strong moral and ethical values, and particularly the importance of treating all people with dignity. Years ago, I read the following passage to my son Benjamin on his bar mitzvah, which is as profound today as it was then. Your Zeta, a man of few words, mentored us to be tenacious in our endeavors, to exercise tolerance in our relationships, and the need to listen carefully to other people. By not giving up when things appear to be unbearable will enable you to accomplish more than you can ever imagine. You will never be able to tell how close you are to achieving a particular goal. For that moment of success may be nearer than you think, even though it seems so far away. Simply by watching and listening, I believe you can learn almost everything you need to know, and sometimes more than other people would like you to know. My father was a man of integrity. What is a person of integrity like? A dear friend of our family, Morris Pollock, provided me with a description of what a person of integrity is, and I would like to share his thoughts with you. What is a person of integrity like? There is a Yiddish word which is untranslatable but describes my father perfectly. A mensch. To be a mensch is to be the kind of person or kind of being to evolve. Someone who is honest, reliable, wise enough to be no longer naive, but not yet cynical. A person you can trust or give you advice for your benefit rather than for his own. A mensch acts out not of fear or out of the desire to make a great impression, but out of a strong inner conviction of who he or she is and what he or she stands for. A mensch is not a saint or a perfect person, but a person from whom all falsehood All selfishness, all vindictiveness has been burned away so that only a pure self remains. A mensch is whole and is one with his or her God. I have known people of integrity, and the impression they leave is memorable. There's a quiet confidence to them, a sense of tranquility that comes at the end of the process of figuring out who you are and what you stand for. Unlike anxious religious people who are consumed by the fear that they may have broken some rule and offended God, men and women of integrity are concerned with living up to their own high standards, not with offending or pleasing God. Yet, in their presence, one feels that God has reason to be pleased.
Hi, I'm Brian. I think I know most everyone here. I am one of Leonard Strear's 7 grandchildren. But to all of us, we never knew him as Leonard. We only knew him as Zeta. I hate that we have to do it like this because I know a lot of us didn't get to say goodbye to him the way that we wanted to. And I know a lot of people wanted to be here today. But thank you for letting me stand up here and say a few words. On behalf of Lauren, my sister, and Ben and Alexa, who can't be here, and Kevin and Aaron and their spouses, and Sarah, I just wanted to say a few words about Zeta, tell a few stories, and not speak too long because I know that he wouldn't want anything like that, but offer a final thank you and goodbye. It's funny, I'm a lawyer, and I talk a lot to people all the time, on the phone, in person, and I have Zeta with me all the time because many years ago at Grammy's birthday party, we were at Taunt Louise on Colfax, and I got up and said something. And I'm standing up there saying something about how much we loved her and how much she meant to everybody, and Zeta goes, stop, stop, stop. Look at how he's using his hands. He must be a Jewish boy. And so I'm always very conscientious of that, even to this day. It stays with me. But as one of his grandchildren, he was always just nothing but filled with love and with life. He had an enormous capacity for joy and to be joyful. When I was thinking about this and what to say and how everything's been over the last little while, I've been looking at a lot of pictures from our family that we have, a lot of pictures in his house that he has of everybody. And from the very young to the present, you see one thing in every single one of those pictures, and it's his smile. It's his ear-to-ear smile that everybody knows that he couldn't fake in a million years, and it's always so real. And that goes with who he was, right? And that goes with his sense of humor. And that is so much how I will remember him. I was watching a couple years ago an interview that they did of Zeta and Bunny and for the Yiddish Book Center. And it was great. It's great. There's so many good stories in there about their lives and growing up and their friendships and their religion and their family. And they laughed the whole time, and they had a great sense of humor and great stories. And at one point, the woman doing the interview was very serious, and it was asked serious questions. And she said, when was a time in your life that you felt particularly Jewish? And Zeta was thinking, and he was going to give an answer, and he was going to start talking, but he interrupts him and goes, it was when he was 8 days old. And he starts laughing, and everybody knows his laugh, and everybody knows his smile, and they, cut the camera and gathered themselves. And it was so funny, right? And that laugh and that smile. And he loved to live, right? As grandkids, we saw that when we traveled with him. He and Grammy took us all over the world, and when we skied with him, and when he ate, when he drank, when he traveled, he loved life. A handful of years ago, he and Grammy went to Santa Fe, and they were at dinner, and their waiter had a tattoo that they really liked, and asked him where he got it. And lo and behold, they went to the tattoo parlor, and Grammy got some ladybugs tattooed on her shoulder, and Zeta got a monarch butterfly. And I don't think there are many 80-year-olds who would do that, but that's just how they were. They loved to live. And he loved Grammy. He loved Grammy so much, and I'm glad they're finally together again. And I think at the bottom of his heart, Zeta wanted to make other people happy too. And he was so beyond generous to everybody, his family and beyond, and humble to a fault. But he spoke softly and loved thoroughly. And I think what was special for each of the grandkids, man, the relationship that we had with him and Grammy, I don't know another a group of grandkids that has a relationship like that with their grandfather. It was incredible. They did everything for us, and we all had our ways to communicate with them. Up until the very end, when Zeta still, when he couldn't hear, and I don't know if that was probably just because he wasn't wearing his hearing aids, right? We could still communicate with him, whether it was going getting oysters and martinis, or passing notes across the table, or watching him watch your kids play, and it was really special. I think he touched all of our lives in an incredible way, and I think everybody knows he hasn't been particularly healthy for a little while, and it's awful and it's devastating and it's heartbreaking, but it's given me at least the chance to think for a while and to reflect. And it's sad and it's devastating and it's heartbreaking, but it gives you the chance to think and to reflect and to smile. And I know he's had an impact on every single person in this room. And I hope that with the devastation and with the heartbreak and the sadness, you can smile. Because when you think about all the incredible things you did with him and all the incredible things he did. But for me and my family, it was more than that. Too, right? He's the reason I'm here. He's the foundation of the success for me and everyone in this family, and for so many in the community. I am so proud to be his grandson. And one other thing in that interview, they asked, what are some things you want to say to the next generation? What are the things you want to pass on? And you guys talked, and said compassion and passion. And if I could give that to the next generation, that's what I would tell them. And I think that's perfect for him. He was so compassionate and he was so passionate. And I love him very much.
Thank you, Brian. Beautiful. And Mike, thank you. Dear Deborah and John, dear Michael and Suzanne, Marcia and Earl, Linda and Les and Lauren and Scott and Lily, and Tessa and Brian and Therese and Emma and Davis and Noah Leonard and Alexa and Ben and Missy and Fiona and Axel and Kevin and Anya and Aaron and Maria and Sarah and Jake and Mackenzie and Sam, dear Sunshine, dear TG and Nagist and Malet and Maze, dear family and friends, all those who are here and those who are watching virtually. By any accounts, Leonard Strear was an extraordinarily successful man. But for Leonard, success was not quantifiable. In the Mishnah tractate Pirkei Avot, we find the following: Ezehu chacham halomed mikol adam, Ezehu ashir hasamech bechelko, Ezehu mechubad hamechabed et habriot. Who is wise? The one who learns from everyone. Who is rich? The one who is satisfied with what he has. Who is honored? The one who honors everyone. Leonard Strear lived a life filled with meaning and purpose and service to his country, his faith, his colleagues, and most importantly, to his beloved family. Simply put, the world is a better place because Leonard lived, not only because of his generosity, which we all know about, but also because of what we've heard so beautifully shared, his values that he has bequeathed to everyone who knew and loved him. Leonard knew that any success he achieved needed to be shared. And he also ensured that his children would carry on his legacy of tzedakah, which doesn't mean charity, which means righteousness. Leonard was not flamboyant, God knows, but he could be boisterous at times. He was thoughtful. He was very funny. He was tenacious. He worked hard and he played hard. He was adventurous, especially when it came to travel and eating. He was honest and ethical and had a strict moral code, and he had little tolerance for others who acted unethically, especially within the Jewish community. He was athletic, skiing and biking well into his 80s, and he loved all sports. He had season passes to the Broncos, the Nuggets, the Avalanche, where he and Irma loved to be caught on the kiss cam. He cultivated a large and tight group of friends, especially from within his industry, which he helped to revolutionize. He loved people, and he was beloved in return. Leonard was a rare combination of gentleness, kindness, hard work, faith, and compassion. And when you were in his presence, it was impossible not to be moved by his gentle smile, his caring, his concern, and the love that emanated from every pore of his being. Leonard was born in 1924 in Detroit, the youngest of 3 children. His parents, Morris and Sophie Strear, moved the family to Morrison, Colorado, and then to Denver, along with his brother Sid and his sisters Ruth and Dorothy, when he was just a baby. And their relatives, the Dinners, who were raising cattle in the Greeley area, convinced them to come to Colorado to pursue agriculture. And so the family started a small chicken and eggs business, delivering their products throughout Denver. And it wasn't easy at first. They even moved back to Detroit for a short while when business was really difficult, but they came back and they worked to make a go of it. Leonard and Sid would go out to Greeley to collect chickens and deliver them to restaurants. And Leonard and his father and brother eventually partnered with the Plus family and moved to Longmont, worked in the slaughtering business, and then they expanded to the poultry business throughout Weld County. And their business grew into the large integrated poultry company, and they started with nothing. And they grew it to Longmont Foods, which of course is legendary. Leonard's father, Morris, wanted his children to grow up in a city where there was an established Jewish community. And so they came to Denver, but the business was always out of Longmont. Leonard graduated from East High and then DU and went to serve his country in World War II. He didn't like to talk much about his war experience. He was a medic, but he landed in Normandy on D-Day as a private first class. He was a hero. He won the Bronze Star for his bravery, and yesterday I got to read a letter detailing his exploits under fire and what he did and how he risked his life for the service of his brothers in arms and his nation. Michael, you were with him when the World War II memorial opened up, and you asked him, Dad, were you at any of these places that were memorialized? It was the only time you ever saw him get teary and choked up about his war experiences. He was at all of them under General Patton. Leonard's life was forever changed when shortly after returning from his army service, he saw from afar a beautiful 18-year-old girl named Irma Kagan at the Chat and Chew Drive-In. She was sitting with a group of friends, and Leonard took one look at her, and he was dumbstruck. He couldn't talk. He didn't actually meet her at the drive-in. He was too nervous to go to her in person, so he asked a friend who she was. He got her name and number and called her up to ask for a date. And she was surprised at his shyness, but she said yes. And there was a story that Irma used to tell her children about how when Leonard first called to ask her out, she accepted, but then had second thoughts. Irma never lacked for dates. She had many suitors. She didn't know about this awkward poultry farmer. But her mother, Lillian, told her that she couldn't back out. She'd made a commitment. Isn't that right, Elaine? And so she went. Well, it must have gone well, because when she came home from that first date, she told her mom that she was going to marry Leonard. And surely enough, 6 months later, they were married at Leonard's mother's house on October 8th, 1950. They had a reception at the Albany Hotel, and Rabbi Zion from Temple performed the ceremony. And for their honeymoon, they drove to Vegas. Supposedly, Leonard taught Irma how to drive, and she ran into a gas pump on that trip. And there were lots of stories about that trip. There was one glitch. I'm told, this is something that he told me. One of Leonard's friends put some Limburger cheese on the radiator as a prank. And Irma thought that the smell was from Leonard at first. Eventually, it smelled so bad they had to get rid of that car, but I digress. After the honeymoon, they came to Denver, and Leonard went right back into the family business, Strear's Quality Poultry. Deborah, you came along in 1951, and then Michael a year later, and Marcy in 1956, and Linda in 1960. And the early years of that marriage were so full of love, but it wasn't easy. Leonard worked hard in Longmont. He left before 4:30 in the morning, but he came home from dinner every night, and the family was always waiting for him to come home before they ate together. Irma had 2 babies before she was 20. But Marcy and Linda came along, it got a little easier. She and Leonard were best friends. They went to sleep every night holding hands. Their love and tenderness was deep. They were playful together. I love this story that you told me when we met about Irma. Every Sunday morning, they would chase each other around the house, and then they would go into their bedroom and lock the door, and the kids had no idea what was going on. They had a dance club with their friends, and they loved to dance. And when they danced Alley Cat, it cleared the room. Theirs was not a fancy marriage. Irma ironed all of Leonard's shirts and handkerchiefs every week. They went to all the Bronco games, the Nuggets, the Rockets, the Avalanche. And of course, the most special family times were spent at the cabin in Grand Lake, hiking, cross-country fishing, skiing, fishing, cross-country fishing. That'd be interesting. She and Leonard had that tandem bicycle, and they had the custom orange sweatshirts with their nicknames, 007 and Pussy Galore. They traveled around the world to China, to Israel, to Russia, Italy, Egypt, the Middle East, Europe, and the Amazon. And they loved traveling to Israel, where Irma had family. And they collected art together. Their beautiful home was filled with paintings and sculptures and mementos from their travels together and from the many galleries they worked with to create their collection. They had such wonderful friends. They did everything with gusto. They called themselves the JJSs, the Jewish jet setters. They traveled and played together, even forging press passes so they could get the best parking spaces at sporting events. They loved doing that when they went skiing. Leonard was absolutely dedicated and devoted to his family. You know, he left early in the mornings. On the weekends, the kids loved driving with him up to the farms to check things out, and he worked incredibly hard to provide for his family. But he always made sure that his children were active and involved. He loved his family. It came before anything. Every day after work, before coming home, he would go to visit his mother, even for 10 minutes. He taught his families, as we heard so beautifully shared by Michael, the values that he wanted them to embody. But Leonard never expected his children to do anything that he himself would not do. He wanted his children to have strong Jewish identities, but he wouldn't send them to the Orthodox Jewish day schools because he also valued pluralism. And so when Herzl and Ramah were founded, Leonard was the first major donor in our community to step forward with a large gift, and others followed his lead. The family traveled together, usually to Turkey conventions, Mexico, Hawaii. They went to the mountains, and of course, Grand Lake, where they boated and water skied. On Sloan's Lake, they had friends with boats. The Streers were not part of the Green Gables crowd. That wasn't who they were. But when they purchased that property in 1973 on Grand Lake, the family was in their element. They could be their true selves. And he loved seeing his children and his grandchildren happy up there. Holidays were wonderful. Those fireworks on the 4th of July and those barbecues. And he took his grandchildren on trips. He did the same thing with his grandchildren he did with his children, going to Costa Rica on Disney cruises in the Czech Republic, and he went to the Galapagos with them. Now, we know that Leonard was extraordinarily philanthropic, but he didn't advertise it. He gave money even when he and his family did not have the money to give. Michael, you told me about the time that Moshe Dayan came to Denver and was soliciting for Israel. It was a tough time. And there were lots of wealthy Denverites who didn't give. But Leonard and his brothers Sid always gave, even when they didn't have it to give. They gave because they knew it was important. It was a part of their lives. He was a founder of Shalom Park and the Eidos and the Yeshiva. He helped bring a Torah to Eidos, dancing in the streets. Our Ark and our Colleen Chapel was donated by the Streers. Every charitable dinner in the town, they went to every single one. He was involved in Cage and Jewish education at Kavod Senior Life, Jewish day camps. He dedicated a cabin at Schwader Camp. There are so many things that have the mark of the Streer family on them in our community, and we are so blessed. These last few years were difficult, and yet whenever I'd see Leonard, he had that smile on his face. He loved life even to the very end. Of course, when Irma died, he was devastated, and he never fully recovered from her loss. Family wants me to recognize the caregivers, Sunshine and TG and Negist and Malit and Maze. You've become part of the family. And the love and care that you gave to Leonard and to Irma means more than you can ever know. He loved you, and you loved him. Leonard knew how to love. Even after Irma was gone, he would stand at her picture, and he would say good morning and good night, putting a kiss. That was his way. Leonard Strear was a strong man. We learn in the Talmud that according to Rabbi Yehuda, 10 strong things were created in the world. Rock is strong, but iron cleaves it. Iron is strong, but fire melts it. Fire is strong, but water quenches it. Water is strong, but clouds bear it away. Clouds are strong, but wind drives them. Winds are strong, but humankind resists them. Humans are strong, but fear casts us down. Fear is strong, but wine casts it out. Wine is strong, but sleep dissolves it. Sleep is strong, but death is stronger. But love is the strongest of all, for it survives death. And so, my friends, for a life that was so well lived, a life full of meaning and purpose and caring, we bid shalom to Aryeh ben Moshe Vesara, to Leonard Streer. Zichrono livracha. May his memory be for an eternal blessing. And let us all say amen. I want to call now a dear friend of Leonard's, Rabbi Foster.
Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu, our God and God of all generations. Thou governest all things with infinite wisdom and mercy, and who guidest the destinies of all of humankind. As a parent have you loved us and showered your blessings upon us. Therefore we shall not murmur even when sorrow befalls us, but with humility and unfaltering trust we shall accept your decrees. In joy and in sorrow alike we praise your goodness and acknowledge your justice. We remember that we are but strangers upon earth. Like a shadow, our life flees away. Help us, O God, so to walk in your sight, that when the few years of our earthly pilgrimage are ended, we may be ready to meet our end with tranquil mind. To thee we look for comfort and strength. When one of our beloved is taken from us and a link is broken in the chain of love which binds us together. Though we walk in the valley of the shadow of death, we shall fear no evil, for you are with us. Be praised, O eternal our God, in all your dispensations, and sanctified be your name, now and forevermore. And let us all say together, amen. Beloved family, dear friends, please give me just a few more moments to add to these very, very beautiful tributes that have already been shared with us. Tributes born out of love and caring and years of understanding. Years of us really learning to understand who Leonard was and how in his really quiet way he really wanted us to be better human beings because of him, even though he would never have said that to us. These moments are always hard. I recognize that. We have moments of joy, we have moments of sorrow, we have moments of fulfillment. I see grandchildren, great-grandchildren, these are moments of fulfillment. We also have difficulties, that's the way life is. But these are moments that are in some ways so very bittersweet. Bitter because death has taken a loved one, but sweet because in so many ways, the pain of his life at the end is finally over. And that was difficult for him, even when we saw him last week. As I understood it, the day I saw him, he was pretty good. We had a good time, didn't we, Deb? And he was doing what he always does. He was smiling. In bed, having a difficult time. He couldn't quite get comfortable, and they came to try to help him get comfortable. But still that huge smile, which each of us will always remember because that's the core of who he was. Days like today, we rob death of its ultimate victory by living life as long as it is ours to live, because that's what he would ask of us. He wouldn't ask of anybody to do something for him, except to sort of live by the example that he tried to live throughout those 97 years. And so there is really a collective sorrow for all of us, as family, as friends, as community, We have all lost an inspiring and yet very gentle person. I'm sure you as his children didn't always see his gentleness. Can't be a parent without having some conflict with your kids. That's the truth. But he was a gentle soul. And he did live by those wonderful principles that Michael spoke about. We learn at moments like this that grief can be a teacher in so many significant ways. You know, I think about this all the time. Many of you know I spend a lot of time at hospice. I talk with lots of people who are in the process of dying and their families are in the process of helping them. I've learned one thing really for sure. People who are in the process of dying want to teach us who are living something about life in three significant ways. They want us, those of us who will live beyond their years, they want us to understand what they lived for. They want us to understand what their values were, what it was that made them do the things that they did. They want to know that they made a difference, even in a quiet way. I know your dad didn't want names on buildings. I know that, even though sort of you forced him into some of that. It's okay. But he was a quiet guy. But he wanted to know that he made a difference. And that his generosity, whether he had it or didn't have it, you shared with me the other day that, and I didn't know about this, years and years ago when they didn't have all that much. They still had these dinners at the temple for the orphan kids that you all understood had so little, and he wanted to make sure that they had something more than what they had before he was involved in their lives. So he wanted to know that he made a difference. And the last thing that people who are in the process of dying want to teach us is they want to know that they will be remembered. Were it not for COVID, we wouldn't be here. We'd be at the temple. We'd be at the temple because that is the place that would hold the number of people that would want to say goodbye to Leonard, that had an appreciation for who he was. But we have to be here and hope that others could join us. You know, Longfellow wrote a wonderful poem. It's called A Psalm of Life. And in it, one of the paragraphs said, "Lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime, and departing leave behind us footprints on the sands of time. Footprints that perhaps another sailing over life's solemn main, a forlorn and shipwrecked brother, seeing, shall take part again." I believe that your dad, grandfather, great-grandfather, our friend, he did leave footprints on the sands of time. And they were important footprints because he really made a difference in this world. What have we learned about him? What is it that he leaves behind? He was a great American rabbi. Some of you know that he was murdered in his own synagogue on a Shabbos morning more than 50 years ago. His name was Morris Adler in Detroit. And he wrote this piece, which in part said the following: "Sorrow can enlarge the domain of our life so that we may now understand the triviality of the things that many pursue. We have in our hands a noble and refined measure for judging the events and objects we daily see. What is important," and I believe that Leonard teaches us this, "what is important is not luxury but love, not wealth but wisdom, not gold but goodness. And I do believe that that's what Leonard cared about. He cared about love. He cared about giving of himself. Cared about that goodness. He cared about wisdom. That's what brings us here today. The love that he had was a love for family, yes. Love for community, yes. But it was a love for the values with which he was raised. I think about that from time to time. Leonard represents a very important generation. He was a first-generation American Jew. Parents came from Europe, as so many of our parents or grandparents did. And when you think about that first generation, you think about the generation that came here, what did they leave? They left behind 1,000 years of Jewish history. That wasn't lost on the next generation. They left behind all of those years and came to a place, not just to make a living. They came to a place that would allow them to escape the anti-Semitism of Eastern Europe. That's why they came here. And that first generation born here, Leonard and his brother and his sisters, them all, wonderful human beings. They understood that they would have a foot in two different worlds. They would have to respect Eastern Europe because that's where their parents came from. And they would have to bridge that gap to this Western society. And they had their own goals. They wanted to stabilize the next generation. They wanted to guarantee the next generation would be better off. And they did. And they bequeathed to you continuity. Make sure that what our parents or our grandparents stood for does not get lost in this world where things count so much and values sometimes count so little. That's what he cared about. That's what first generation was about. He appreciated being a part of that first generation. He appreciated the idea that he had a long life. He said to me the other day, you know, we're gone a long time. He wanted to live. Yes, he knew he was not well. He wanted to live because he knew we were gone a long time. He also will be measured by goodness, not gold. Did he have the gold? Yes, okay, he had wealth. I understand that. But it was the goodness that we will remember. Because even when he didn't have the ability, he still made things happen for people. His presence is that goodness. For you as family, he was there at all those occasions. His gift to us as Americans through his service in the military. I was on Normandy Beach 2 years ago. Had never been there before. And I remember all of the things we saw and all of the films we saw and how much it must have been difficult for those brave soldiers, thousands of them, some who died and some who made sure others didn't die like your dad. It made a difference. And that's part of their goodness, part of his goodness. And so when he got the Bronze Star and he got the Purple Heart, those were all earned by him. But he was a humble guy. That's maybe why he didn't share so much of that with you, because of his own humility, because that's who he cared about. He was not a planner, but he was a worker. And that was part of his goodness. He wanted to make sure that you as family would have for the next generation. He had wealth, but more importantly, he had wisdom. He's intuitive, and he was insightful. He was soft-spoken. He was that quiet teacher that made a difference. Even when he didn't want credit for what he did, he was inspired to do and to make the community a better place. But mostly, it was this family that was at the heart of his concerns. Yes, of course, with Irma, those nearly 70 years together. What a wonderful way of thinking about two human beings. What a wonderful love affair that they had. And they cared about that. And yes, these years have been difficult since her passing. He cared about you as children and his grandchildren, all of you, and the next generation. Because he understood that continuity takes place one generation to the next. And that's what drove him. And so, dear family, dear friends, we're here on this day of sadness to say goodbye, yes. To remember, yes. But I believe in so many ways we are here to emulate who he was. That's what would give him the greatest pleasure. That's what would give him that sense of fulfillment. If each of us, especially the next generation, if each would take some aspect of his life and make it a part of your own, not just because you want to do it, but because he did it, that would be the greatest gift that you can give to him and to what he has done in this world. It is in that spirit that we resolve to face our grief without self-pity, but with bravery and integrity, keeping before us forever the blessings that God conferred upon us in this life that he but lent to us. And in a world where our most precious goods are perishable, let us resolve to honor our beloved dead by being so good to the living, so kindly, so understanding, so forgiving, so transcendent of pettiness, that in our love for him we shall hearken to those who remain and who need us and our strength. May it be through new relationships and new service to humanity that we make good our loss, and in the beauty of our own lives erect the noblest monument to our mourned dead. And thus the beauty of his life shall ever abide among us all as a living and loving benediction. Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, yehi shem Adonai mevarach me'atav v'ad olam. God has given. God has taken away. Praise be the name of God, now and forevermore. And let us all say together, Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi, as always, for those beautiful words. Into your care, O God, we entrust the spirit of Leonard Strear. For you keep faith with your children in death as in life. Sustain us that we may meet with serenity the mysteries that lie ahead, knowing that when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you, God, are with us, a loving friend in whom we put our trust. You are the light of our life, our hope in eternity. And I ask us now to please rise as we are able for the Il Malei Rachamim.
El Malei Rachamim, Shochem Bamromim, Hamsei Menucha Nechona, Achat Konfen Hashchina, Im Kedoshim Udarim, Kezohar Rakia, Moshe v'Sarah shehalach le'olamo. Borachamim Yastireu b'seite knafav le'olamim. V'yitur v'yitur hachayim v'nishmato Adonai u'nachalato ve'anuach b'shalom al mishkavo v'nomar amen.
Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Aryeh Leb ben Moshe Vesara, to Leonard Streer, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and let us all say amen. My friends, our service will continue with family and those who are here processing to Emmanuel Cemetery. We will lay Leonard to rest. There will be a Shiva service tonight at 6:30 p.m. on Zoom. The family has sent out invitations, or you can get the link through Feldman Mortuary. This concludes our service. Thank you this time.